Welcome to Mindset Mastery with Mindset Mary. Today, we are in for an extraordinary treat as I have the privilege of introducing you to Stephen Scoggins, a genuine visionary, a beacon of transformative leadership, and a living embodiment of the principles of servant leadership, with a journey that has taken him from the depths of homelessness to becoming an industry titan, an 8-figure serial entrepreneur, a best-selling author, and a highly sought-after motivational speaker and host of the Stuck to Unstoppable podcast. To just name a few of his accomplishments, Stephen's story is a testament to the power of the human mind and spirit. As a fellow advocate of life, business, and mindset mastery, I am genuinely excited to delve into Stephen's insights to uncover the invaluable wisdom that he has gained on his remarkable path. Let's dive right in. Welcome, Stephen, to the show.
Mary, how are you doing? I'm super stoked to talk to you. You always bring the energy, and I'm looking forward to this. I am a little concerned that I may not be able to live up to all those expectations, but I'll give you all I got.
I am not concerned. Thank you so much. Yes, I am so happy to have you, Stephen. So, Stephen, your journey from homelessness to becoming an 8-figure entrepreneur is truly incredible because it proves the powerful notion that our past circumstances do not disqualify us from our future. Can you share some pivotal moments that led you to this transformative journey and fueled your passion to serve others at the highest level through the personal development industry?
I'd love to give you some snapshots for sure. For me, one of the first things I realized early on, I was probably in my late teens, early 20s when I was going through that battle with homelessness and whatever. And one of the things that I learned very quickly is the level in which you can think about your future becomes the level in which you actually attract your future. So what I mean by that is that my very first mentor, old man Myrick, he pulled me in his car one afternoon. This is right before I went through the homelessness stuff. And he was trying to set me on the course of like growth and whatnot. And I remember him sitting me down. And he said, "What is the difference between a rich man and a poor man?" I'm like, "Well, of course it's money. Everybody knows a rich man has money and poor man don't have money, right?" And he said, "Absolutely not." I'm like, "Huh?" He said, "Absolutely not. It's the way they think." Yes. And he asked me a very important question. He said, "Do you want to continue thinking like your father, or do you want to learn to think like me?" Now, to understand that, you have to understand my father was a very hard worker, very, very committed to working hard and kind of being up early, staying in down late and sun up to sundown kind of mentality. But when he would make money, he would spend money. Whereas old man Myrick had the same level of work ethic, but he would make every dollar compound on itself. So he would he wouldn't spend, he would invest. He would invest in things that made more dollars, which then gave him ways to invest more of his time to create more time, which allowed him to exercise his God-given talent, which allowed him, in my opinion, to become unstoppable. And on top of that, be incredibly generous to the open public. So a lot of times people don't understand that really it's not what they learn as much as is who they learn it from and how they learn it. So there's 3 different ways to learn information. I'm what's known as a visual/kinesthetic learner. Okay. So you can learn by watching videos. That's a visual learner. A kinesthetic learner is by working with your hands. So I grew up in a construction industry, so working with my hands is kind of natural. And then there's the auditory learning, right? Most people don't understand that sometimes they have a hard time learning. And I'm somebody with dyslexia and ADHD and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't that I couldn't learn information. It was that the way in which I was learning the information was preventing it from sticking. Mm-hmm. So I say all that to say that when you set out on this journey of personal development, personal discovery, personal self-awareness, personal life mastery, it always starts with the mind, always 1,000%. If you don't believe that you can achieve something more than you are today, then you are always going to feel discouraged, depleted, and doubtful of your future. Mm-hmm. So what I like to tell people all the time is every one of us has an emotional resonance. Okay. Every last one of us has a level, some would call it a vibration or whatever. I'm a big Jesus guy. You got big old Jesus behind me, right? Kind of deal. But I also understand that the soul has a resonance. The soul, they have scientifically proven that your soul will radiate off your skin up to 1/4 of an inch or more, depending on the level, some would call it vibration of that. Okay. Now, healthy emotional states are going to have joy, contentment, fulfillment, happiness, love, passion, commitment, drivenness, All of those are historically healthy states where doubt, insecurities, pride, arrogance, all of those things have low resonance. Okay. This is going to make more sense in just a second. If your audience understands that they have to spend most of their emotional energy attracting or going after the thing that's in front of them, they will by definition align themselves with their future selves versus their current self. Okay. Or they can do like I did in the early days. They can look at their life based on the limitations that they see at their fingertips. So my job is not what I want. My relationship's not what I want. My this is not what I want. My that is not what I want. If you focus there, that is what your soul is going to continue to impermeate and continue to radiate in and out. Okay. So I say it this way. The easiest way to say this is your emotional intensity must match or be congruent with your aspirational identity. Okay. I didn't graduate high school. I have a GED. I've never been to college. I've now generated hundreds of millions of dollars over the last 25 years in revenue. And everything I learned by watching other mentors, by being mentored, by bumping my head, by being experienced. But in the depths of my soul, I knew I was called to serve at scale. Right. So if you know you're called to serve at scale, no matter what scale means to you, whether it's your community, your family, something bigger, worldwide, global. I got a friend of mine flying in literally as we speak right now for a live podcast. We're going to be recording here soon. And we did a quick Zoom call just like this. And she said, I just know that I'm called to do something at a global level. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
The trick is to focus on the person you have to become to put yourself in a global service of others mentality. And you will be like our good friend, Evan Carmichael. You'll figure out very quickly that all of a sudden you'll make a worldwide impact. Yeah. You know, Evan started off with a YouTube channel that struggled for 7 or 8, 10 years, like a long time. He met his wonderful, beautiful wife, Nina. And the next thing you know, all of a sudden it rocket ship off. I'm not saying she had something to do with it, but I think she did.
She had something to do with it.
Right. Exactly. But if you think about it, like he now has, not only has he millions of subscribers and stuff, but he has millions of subscribers. Some of those are being translated to different languages. Some of his programs are now being translated in different languages. He's making a global, worldwide impact. Imagine if he had started and given up on year 4, 5, 6, or 7 with his YouTube strategy. Yeah. We would have no Evan Carmichael. We would have no top 10 rules for success. Yep. We'd have no market movers. We'd have no momentum theorem. We'd have no believe. We'd have no one word. Yeah. So I guess I say all of that. I know it's a long-winded answer to your first question, but for me, belief in what you're supposed to become should always be more powerful than the doubts of the person you are.
Yes, I love that. I love that. I heard someone once say that, life is not happening to you. Life is responding to you. And it's really about that emotional home. Where am I living? Fear, uncertainty, doubt. The more I think about it, the more I'm going to attract it. I absolutely believe in the power of frequency. 100%, because I've lived it. I have lived in that dark place, and now I'm living in a much lighter place. And my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions, what goes through my mind the moment I wake up is completely different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think I do agree. You have to embody that future self in order to bring that future self closer. We have to keep looking forward.
I want to mention one thing to that, because you just brought something to the top of my mind. Yeah. In order to become the future you, you've got to put the current you to rest. And that is always a requirement of going to the next level, is going through what's called the dark night of the soul.
Yes.
Okay. The dark night of the soul is when on the surface, you feel like everything under the sun is falling apart. I will tell you that some of the most pivotal moments of the personality you have to develop to attract the things that you want in your life die during those moments. And there's only one way to crush them. Okay. I'll give you an example. In 2017, I was going to do my first live event called Transform You Live. Okay. I had spent 9 months putting this event together. I had a workbook that was about 1.5 inches thick of content I was going to teach for 3.5 days. Okay. Now at that time, I built a very sizable company with people that I thought I could trust to then run that company. Okay. Lo and behold, the night before I'm supposed to go through that event and go through that whole process, I get a phone call from one of my then team members who calls me and tells me my entire executive team, not one, not to, the entire executive team had planned to try to take my business out from under me. Okay. Now this is the night before I'm supposed to step on stage and teach for 3 days.
Yeah.
Right. I'll never forget this for as long as you can imagine. I felt betrayed. I felt alone. I felt isolated. I felt like everything was crushing in on me. Everything was falling apart. There was no way for me to respond and like somehow pull a rabbit out of a hat, so to speak. Right. However, the next morning I had a friend of mine. So I went to the event to get it kickstarted, knowing that I was going to spend half the day there and then half the day back at the business trying to clean it up and figure out what's going to happen. Right. A good friend of mine who's very, very big in the faith community happened to be at the event. And I'll never forget this for as long as I live. I saw her and I immediately wanted to weep. And she stopped me about midstream, about mid-tier. And she said, "Oh no, honey, you can't go to where God has taken you to or where you're supposed to be going without going through here. You have to go through here to get to where you're trying to go." Now, I'll tell you what, and we call it the cost of the calling. Okay. I'll tell you what was on my shoulders. In that moment, I wanted the stage. I wanted the limelight. I wanted to be known. I wanted to be recognized. I wanted to be, for lack of a better word, famous. Okay. Mm-hmm. I go through that next 6 or 8 months of battling back, rebuilding my business, hiring a new executive team, training a new executive team, driving thousands of miles because my business operates in multiple states here in the US. And as I'm going through all of that, the crushing that was happening within me, about 6, 8 months later, I went back to go just visit her, and I sat in her study at her house, and I was crying, and she finally let me cry because that was good. Right. So I kind of had my emotional release.
That's
and
good.
I looked up at her and I said, "You know what, if this is what it cost to have the stage, to have the fame, to have the limelight, to have the life and the best-selling books and all, if this is what it cost, I don't want it. He can have it." You know what she said? You know what she said?
Okay.
She said, "Great. Now you're ready."
Right. Because you've already paid the price.
Yeah. And that's just it. There's a price to be paid if you're going to serve at scale, because there's a refinement that happens within your heart and your soul and your mind that must take place. Otherwise, everything you touch will be toxic.
Yes.
If pride and arrogance and insecurity and those behaviors lead your endeavors, there's nothing wrong with wanting to serve at scale. So there's a big difference in wanting to serve at scale, whether it be on a stage or being a book or being a podcast, or there's nothing wrong with that. The trick is making it about the people you're trying to serve rather than you being seen by the people you're trying to serve.
Yes, I agree. It goes back to intentions, Stephen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are the intentions, and are you in alignment with those intentions?
Exactly.
And you know, that kind of takes me to self-awareness, right? Like in the business world, knowing yourself is often cited as like a crucial factor for success. Specifically, you know, we have to be able to look at our subconscious mind and the programming that we've put in there, and maybe that's programming that we've put in, or perhaps it's programming that we've maybe adopted over time. But I guess I'm curious to know, how is your ability to cultivate that deep sense of self-awareness within yourself? How has that helped you in your personal development journey?
I would say it this way. We kind of talked about it. My first level of self-awareness came from my first level of major crushing. Okay. Which is another reason why I say when we start talking about the crushing or the dark night of the soul, what I'm trying to let people understand is when it happens, be present with it, allow for it, go through it. Don't resist it. Don't, just let it be. Okay. Yeah. Because what's going to happen is in order for you to have an effective crushing, you are going to get to a place of surrender. Okay. If you never get to a place of surrender, you never actually learn anything, which means you never actually personally develop self-awareness or anything other than that. Okay. So that's step number one to me. Step number one is you will probably have to go through your very first season of self-awareness, right? So this is you before self-awareness is completely oblivious to how you treat people, completely oblivious to how you talk to yourself, completely oblivious to understanding your dreams and your aspirations, completely oblivious to your talents, your gifts, right? You have no honest recognition. In fact, I'd like to say that before self-awareness, most of us are living someone else's life. We're living the life that a parent said we should live, or a boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, whatever. Or we are just trying to mimic or copycat our favorite influencer, teacher or whatever, mentor. I know I've done all of those and then some. However, when you get to a place where you've gone through the surrender process, you become hyper aware of wanting to become better. As you become hyper aware of wanting to become better, you start, I call it God, call it Holy Spirit, call it Jesus, whatever you want to call it. People might see it differently. But when we go through that thing, what happens is you become hyper aware of the next thing you need to work on. Okay. Now, the trick is a lot of people get stuck after that first season of the dark night of the soul into this next season of becoming hyper self-aware. Here's the trick. 90% of the people that go through that experience, they stay in the experience longer than they need to stay in the experience. And here's why. It's because that when they become hyper aware of the things that, well, they need to work on, rather than seeing it as a tea leaf or something to just, it's an indicator, right? They see it as something that they have to blame, shame, and condemn themselves for. Yes. All right. I got a good friend of mine who I won't, just because it's not my place, but he went through a major life shift, meaning he had a major platform. He was training hundreds of thousands of people on an annual basis. Got himself into a little trouble with his marriage. Okay. And then 3 years later, he was still wearing it, as in he was going to be this person for the rest of his life. Okay. I encouraged him and said, that is one instance where you can have multiple lessons that you can learn. But now the quickest way to let go of that is to own that mistake, use that as an educational thing for yourself and other people. Okay. But you create distance from those major life mistakes. You create distance when you surrender to the fact that it happened. You can learn this lesson from it. And this is how it transforms you. When you can articulate to people how that event transforms you inside and out, you're going to help far more people than if you're just talking at people about, I don't know, leadership or finance or any number of things. So again, the trick is in this model is to not get lost in blame, shame, and condemnation. Well, how do you do that, Stephen? Well, it's actually kind of easy. You look at that set of life events, whether it's a 1-year run, a 5-year run, a 10-year run, a 15-year run. You look at that as if you're watching a movie. Okay. You're no longer actually taking part in the movie. You're no longer, about to open the closet door or about to have this love scene or whatever, right? Which is where most of our memories are. Okay. Because we learn in the form of images. The brain only receives images and it assigns meaning to the images. Okay. And that's how we actually learn. Words are the same thing. Here's an apple. Oh, great. This picture equals this word apple. You see what I'm saying? In the same kind of way, when you start looking at your life from a movie, as you're watching a movie, you start looking at it as an editor, right? And you start looking at the things you can take out of the movie and the new things that need to be put into the movie.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? The trick is most people want to look at someone else's movie without looking at their own movie. What I would say is if you're going to come into hyper awareness in a safe capacity, then it's done through the lens of I'm watching my movie to see what I can learn about this character. Okay. Because every belief or every thought leads to a belief. Every belief leads to an action. Every action leads to a result over and over and over again. So if you watch this person screw up their relationship by self-sabotage because of insecurity or whatever, well, the result is the person had a self-sabotage moment. It's a traditional rom-com. Okay. Which is we fall madly deeply in love and then one of us screws it up and then we fall madly back in deep in love, but it's more pure. Yeah. It's the same. That's why it resonates with us, because it's very similar to life. Okay. Yeah. If the person is willing to say, hey, I totally botched this up. I don't know where this insecurity comes from, but I can look at the result. I can back my way into the stupid action. Then I can back my way into the improper belief. And then I can back my way into the thought that created all that. Correct. Okay. That is how you master your mind over time and you improve yourself over time. Another little piece I'd like to put onto this is that your relationships will change as you evolve. Most of us evolve about every 5 to 7 years. We become literally different people. Okay. which is why it's entirely possible for relationships that start in a beautiful way, whether it be friendships, work relationship, whatever, cannot be that way 5, 6, 8, 10 years down the road, because not everybody is growing at the same pace or the same level. I say all that to say that I want to give people permission to assess their relationships and whether or not those relationships are mutually feeding. In other words, every relationship to me should not be a give or a take. Every relationship to me should be a give and a take, right?
Yes.
Or a learn and a teach, so to speak. I think if you do those things, then you'll become hyper self-aware in the right way. And because of that, you'll create unstoppable momentum in transforming your self-awareness.
Right.
If I could share one more thing really fast, is there's actually 7 levels of life mastery. Okay. The first level is awareness, is what we've been talking about. Okay. The next level is application. Then it's followed by mentorship, followed by emergence, right? All the way up to the point of life mastery. Okay. At the point of mastery is now when you have the greatest point of teaching other people. A lot of people like to try to teach what they're learning as they're learning it without mastering it, which is why hurt people continue to hurt people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you teach it, when you're still learning it yourself, or you haven't even figured out if what you're teaching has given you results, sometimes you can even lead people astray, even if you don't have that intention. Right. So yeah, gaining mastery in your craft is super important. And going back to what you were talking about the movie, you like look at your life like a movie. I think that a lot of people, like in the people that I coach, it's really like a story, right? Like they've got this story, and the things that happened to them in the past, they've given it meaning in their story. Yet the meaning that they assign, it's not serving them or moving them forward, which is why, like you said earlier, they're stuck in that stage, right? So they've got the awareness, but they don't know how to move forward, and they don't know how to use that story to help them move to that next level. And I often find that has a lot to do with also identity. Like, who do I think I am? And what do I think I'm worthy of achieving and creating and becoming? And sometimes when you really dig into people's stories, there are issues of worthiness.
Most times.
Deeply rooted. Yeah. Has that been your experience as well?
I can speak from two perspectives. One, from people that I've served, and two, from my own life. I had a good friend of mine who he and his wife built a company called Brand Builders Group, which is a fantastic personal brand company that helps thought leaders figure their stuff out, figure out their messaging, figure out their identity, and then puts them in the marketplace. Okay. Rory and AJ Vaden, and Rory brought me on his podcast. This is probably a year and a half ago. And through the course of the podcast, he goes, "Why do you think it took you so long to step on, not stage as in a physical stage, but step up and start stepping out in hopes of serving other people?" And during the podcast, it's really cool to go watch. If you can find the brand, let's see, Influential Personal Brand Podcast. Again, this is probably a year and a half ago, and just search my name. You will watch me actually have this epiphany, or you'll hear me have this epiphany during the podcast. And I said, "You know what, Rory? I think I've just now, as of right this second, have an understanding about what that is." And the question is, am I worthy of having a voice?
Oh, okay.
Okay. The reason that's important is because almost all of us, and I don't know why this is, but all of us struggle with worth. Yeah. And I think most of us struggle with worth because most of us are trying to get the worth specified or dialed in or dialed up based on external means. We think the job is going to make us worthy. We think the relationship's going to make us worthy. We think hair extensions like mine, as you can see, are not going to make us worthy, right? We think all these different things are going to make us worthy.
Yeah.
The reality is all of us were worthy at birth. If you think about the most pure moments in your life, it's those early days of birth, right? There's not a care in the world. You're more divinely connected in that moment because nobody's corrupted your brain, right? You've got this purity that's set in there. If you can figure out the way to bring purity back up on your passions and your purpose on a regular basis, you're going to start to have a greater sense of self-worth. You also have a greater sense of self-worth by doing the work that we've already talked about, which is a mutual level of self-awareness, right? Most people focus on what they suck at, And they tell themselves, I suck at this, I suck at this, I suck at this, I did that wrong, I did this wrong, this happened, this happened to me a long time ago because of that, this divorce, this and I hate to use these words, but they're real. This rape, whatever I've used, all of these things happened to me. The reality is those things will always have power over them as long as they're always looking at those events as things that happen to them, rather than things that actually help them happen for them, kind of thing. I'll give you an example. I once knew a young lady that had gone through a horrific situation early in her early teens, sex trafficked, the whole deal. Okay. It's really cool now because she went through that experience. She went through a healing process of that experience. She forgave the folks that hurt her. Right. You know what she does now? She helps tens of thousands of women that have been through similar circumstances, understand their real worth and their real value. Yeah. I say all that to say that when you go through horrific circumstances or traumatic circumstances, no matter how great or how small, right? Because a traumatic experience to me might be totally different from a traumatic experience to you. So trauma is trauma to the person that experienced the trauma. But when you go through part of that journey and you go through that understanding and you're able to identify your self-worth based on your gifts and your talents and the value you bring to the world. Okay. So what unique value do you bring to the world? And it could be, I'm a really great babysitter. And I know that sounds cheesy until that child grows up to be someone who does big things based on your mentorship. One of my second mentors of all time was a high school girlfriend's mother. They used to call me Sugar Wooga, and I called her Mama Wama. Right. And for some reason, she fed me, she clothed me, she mothered me. She treated me as if I was her own. Yeah. Okay. So at the moment I was about ready to take my life, it was her that answered the phone and then gave me 11 words that changed my life forever. This too shall pass, and what comes next will be greater. You know what I did 3 weeks later? I found my faith. And then I also started the business that became a very high 8-figure business from the trash piles.
Wow.
Okay. So I say all that to say that sometimes a person's major life impact will happen in a moment, like in a specific moment. She never got to see it. Her or Mr. Old Man Myrick never got to see everything that's already taken place. And I'm still not done yet. Okay.
We're never done.
Exactly.
Right.
But if you look at this, they were both moment impactors. They impacted me in a moment. Yeah. And it transformed me. And now they have a legacy that outlived them because now I get to talk about them all the time and how they transform me. Wow. You see, most of us feel like we have to have a stage or a TV show or whatever to have reach. You know what you do? You know what you need to have reach? Impact. If you can impact one life, you're by definition God's version of Facebook and Instagram, right? Right. You impact one person, you're getting likes and shares everywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So why not search for impact? Why not get a healthy dose of understanding who you are and then offer those gifts to the world with no expectation of return? And then you'll find that everything that you've ever wanted, the desires of your heart, will actually show themselves to you just because you've developed a life of service. Totally counterproductive to what the world says you should be doing. But it's the one thing that feeds us and builds us and grows us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard you say also, our purpose really comes from our pain. And last year, I think it was last year, I was listening to Ed Milet, and he's like the first person in the personal development space that I actually listened to. And that's how I was exposed to personal development. And he said something like, you're most qualified to serve the person that you once were. And
yeah, he was in the green room with right? Rory and I.
Yeah. I did.
Rory actually was the first person to actually come up with that, was actually the first person to put those words into action. And then we all have our own little spins on it, but it is true. It is true.
It is. And
the greatest purpose in life you'll ever have is serving the person you used to be, hands down.
100%. And I love just the way it empowers and gives us permission. Yes, you messed up or things happened that you didn't want. Yes, that all happened, but let's leverage it to help others not go through that. Or if they're going through that, to go through it faster, through your wisdom, through your insights. And that's how you can impact. And I just love that, because we always, as humans, I think we spend too much time focusing on the things that we're not doing, the things that went wrong. Right. And that ties back to why we have this issue with worthiness and identity. We're literally focusing on the wrong thing.
Well, we're allowing those events to suck our worthiness out of us.
Yes.
Okay.
Agree.
The trick is you have to understand is you have control over your thoughts. You have complete control. Well, no, I always feel, I didn't say your feelings. I said your thoughts. Your thoughts influence your feelings. Okay. So let's take this young lady's example I gave a second ago. Okay. She could still be sitting in her bedroom or whatever, or beating herself up, medicating herself with all kinds of different things to try to cover up the hurt. Okay. She chose to say, come hell or high water, I'm going to heal from this. And as a result, I'm going to help people from this. Okay. Most of the people I know that are struggling are that typically are struggling with worthiness. It's because they've given the worthiness power over to the events or other people that have impacted their lives. Yes. What I'm saying is stop it. Stop it. You have at any given moment, the choice of whether or not you want to feel those feelings anymore, or whether or not you want to create a new feeling, which will create a new neural pathway, which will cause you to transform from the inside out. And as a result, all the things that you've been through, all the pain and traumatic experience that you think that you would never have any meaning or value, all of a sudden they make you more compassionate, empathetic, and experience-driven intelligence to help people who are behind you. So I'll use it this way. Somebody said, well, Stephen, who the person used to be? Well, I've been the high school dropout. I've been the person in poverty. I've been the homeless kid. I've been the person who almost took my life. I've been the person who was trying somehow, some way to build a business and an innovation idea out of nothing. I've been through a divorce. I've been through embezzlement. Like you could, any number one of those things could say, hey, blah, 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 you're unworthy. Okay. You have no worth. That you'll never, my first decade of my life, it felt like one giant, like punch in the face. Okay. Maybe even 15 years. Okay. Mm-hmm. I now use every single one of those stories at different times with different audiences to communicate a specific lesson learned, specific point. And it's not uncommon for cries and tears and joy and release and breakthrough to happen at our events, on calls, doing podcasts. It's because I've decided that in order to transform my life from the inside out, I have to be completely transparent with myself and other people. Radical honesty is the key to transformation. But radical honesty through the lens of love, not the lens of hate. Yeah. So if you can learn to love yourself, this is going to sound goofy and silly, but I literally say, I look at myself in the mirror nowadays and I say, I love you, Stephen. I'm proud of you 3 or 4 times a day. And it's not because I'm trying to like say, well, you're going to become arrogant and prideful. No, I'm reminding myself that I have worth, because the reality is I got programmed that I didn't have worth by letting other people speak in and over my life. Therefore, just like a computer, if you're going to fix a computer program, you have to overwrite the previous program. Okay.
Yeah.
No one's going to just come into your life and overwrite the program for you. You're going to have to start talking to yourself, teaching yourself, journaling for yourself, reading books, watching podcasts. Like you have to go on a hunger journey.
Absolutely.
You do that and you'll win.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think someone perhaps did overprogram your program slightly. Maybe your girlfriend's mom, where she said those 11 words and that got it going. But I think you can't sustain that new programming until you're actually taking actions. Right?
There's a belief that, and I actually believe this is true, that when you truly, and I mean truly, actually want to learn the lessons, you will be surrounded by the mentors that will teach you how to learn the lessons.
Yes.
You will not meet those mentors until you are at an emotional, spiritual, and mental place to accept the teaching.
I totally agree. What's that saying? When the student is ready to learn,
I think the teacher appears, right?
Yeah.
That is 1,000% true.
Yes.
I don't know who did it the first time, but it's 1,000% true.
100%. That's just incredible wisdom. And it's like when we start taking our minds and pointing them to the things that we want to create and accomplish, that's, I think the other thing is, right, you're attracting to your world the things that you're focusing on.
Yep.
So,
well, the easiest way to know this is, and this is where I think if you're going to start a self-awareness journey or mindset journey or continue the one you're on, the one thing you're going to need repetitively over time is clarity. Yes. Okay. Here's why. It's harder work to get clarity on a lot of different things, but if you ask yourself enough questions in a healthy kind of way, I heard someone say yesterday, ask what questions, not why, not how questions. What can I change? What should I learn? Maybe who should I lean into? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
As you become increasingly more and more clear, you're also going to become increasingly more and more confident because your competence is increasing with your clarity.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. And I think that's something that many of us struggle with is getting
Mm-hmm.
that clarity and also going back to, getting clarity of intention,
Mm-hmm.
what is it that I want and what do I need to do today to get
Yeah,
one step closer to what it
sure.
is that I want, to create or who I want to become. And it's, yeah. And it really goes back to like, how do you not use your present moment circumstances to define your next step, right? Like we need to use our future selves
Mm-hmm.
and then define the next step from the point of view of our future self.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that, I think that's almost like a muscle that we need to train
Well,
every
you can
day.
also make it automatic. All right.
Okay.
So here's how you make it automatic.
Yes.
I did this for the very first, I had just started my company. I was in a single wide trailer that I didn't technically, I owned it, but I couldn't afford it. So my brother was paying the bills for me.
Okay.
And I was in a spare bedroom and I just started my business. Okay. The one that became a really large one thus far.
Construction.
Yep. I started that business, but I wrote myself a $100,000 check and I put it on the refrigerator and with a magnet and I signed it. Okay.
Oh,
So
yeah.
for 7 years, I had to open that refrigerator door to get water, to get milk, to get my protein shakes or whatever. Like I had to repeatedly going past that. I also went and cut out pictures of all the things that I wanted they were tangible things that I wanted, like, trucks and, house and all this kind of stuff. I cut out pictures of, this is important. I cut out pictures of females that embodied the type of character that I was attracted to. Okay. So it wasn't just wow, she's hot. It was like, she appears to be honest, loyal, considerate, like on her own journey, somebody who's actually going after her own growth, stuff like that. Okay. I say all that to say that the best way to make it automatic is to make it visible.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So write yourself a check, put it on the thing. If you're searching for a mate, like go through the character. My grandfather taught me this. After a string of really bad broken relationships. He said, make your list. And so I started making my list where I wanted to have this color hair and these color eyes and da, 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 da. And he's like, no. All that stuff goes last. I'm like,
Yeah.
but that's what I'm attracted to. He's like, no, you're going to be more attracted to the character that this woman possesses. So then it was like honest, truthful, loyal, driven, right? I have a very strong personality, right? So knowing that about myself, again, self-awareness, knows that I don't need someone who's completely demure and passive. Right? I need someone that can stretch me and run with me, right? So we make all these different character lists.
Okay.
Here's a really cool thing. At the end of making this list, I'm done with the list and I'm super proud of this list. I'm like, look, this is like a perfect female, right? He's like, that is a really strong female. Yeah, I agree with you. He goes, now let me ask you another question. I'm like, okay. He goes, what kind of man do you have to become to attract that woman?
Oh, mic drop.
Exactly. Goes back to clarity, right?
Yeah.
Most people are stumbling their way into relationships, business decisions, professions. They're just stumbling their way in. Well, it's in front of me. Okay. There is a time and a place to knock something over and to have a learning experience. But like with relationships specifically, or running a business or running a profession, like those are very big decisions, right? And you have to have very clear boundaries about what those things need to be in an effort to prevent yourself from getting led astray. I believe that every time you're about to have the main thing you're supposed to have, whether it be relationships or finance or whatever, that you will always have to battle the counterfeit first. There's always a counterfeit that comes in. Okay. And it's the person, it's the place, it's the thing, it's the business that's 80% of your vision, right? Look, they're close. Like, they're perfect, except they're not loyal.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And you end up settling, and because you end up settling, you never actually end up getting the thing that's actually going to feed your soul. I say all of that as a way to help people understand that everything that you want in your life, you got to get super clear on, as clear as you possibly can, on why you want it, what you want, why you want it, and then you start creating steps on how to get there. So put pictures on your bathroom mirror, write yourself Bible verses or scriptures or quotes all over your house, write yourself $100,000 check, do the spouse or do the partner checklist where you're writing the list of who this person needs to be, right? Talk about, use all 5 of your sentences to write a quick summary, almost like a journal entry of, I want to wake up every morning and I want to smell the beach air.
Yeah.
Right. I want to look outside the window and see the sunset. I want to taste this, I don't know, Colombian coffee. I'm just using these, get descriptive. And then once you have those elements around your house and around where you stay and places that you frequent often, what happens is you start to make it automatic. You start reminding yourself, read that summary at the end of every day before you head to bed. Right. Because you'll start dreaming about that stuff. And as you dream about it, you'll attract it. And as you attract it, you'll obtain it. Right. 100%. So you make it automatic by clarifying what it is and how you're going to get it and why you want it. You clarify all those things. I'll give you another little piece of service here. All of everything that you want in your life, whether it be a spouse, a relationship, finance, or whatever, any of that stuff, ask the divine for it by going through the steps I just laid out, but ask them for it through the heart of service. In other words, if I meet this ideal partner, together, we can do this mission together. Or if I'm going to create this business, this is going to be the legacy impact of this business. Or if I step into this profession, this is going to be the legacy impact of this profession. You give yourself meaning by defining what it is that you want and then clarifying how you're going to get there. And you do that by making it automatic, by seeing it on a regular basis.
Wow. Wow. I cannot argue with what you just said. That is 100% true. Follow that process and then create opportunities to give yourself evidence, like your $100,000 check, like your vision board and whatever it may be. But then it's not enough to just create the evidence and see it every day. What are you doing about it?
Yeah. Evidence always follows belief.
Yeah.
Right. You don't get evidence before you believe. You have to believe it before you have the evidence.
100%.
Right. So if evidence always follows belief, then the only evidence that you're going to be able to go back to help yourself fight through another day is one time, maybe 10, where you fought the battle and won. And then you can say, you know what? I fought that battle. I won here. Guess what? I'm fighting this battle. I know I'm going to win here.
Yes.
It's an anchoring technique.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, Stephen, they say that success leaves clues, but our conversation today has certainly been a treasure trove for wisdom. Thank you so much, Stephen. So if people want to follow you and see what you're up to and get more of this incredible wisdom, where can they go to follow you?
Oh gosh, probably the easiest way is the StephenScoggins.com, or I'm very active on Instagram. I'm everywhere. But it's Stephen with a PH, _ Scoggins with 2 G's. On pretty much every platform. So hopefully that helps. And Mary, I've enjoyed hanging out with you today. I look forward to getting to know you even better.
Me too. Me too. Thank you so much, Stephen. Take care.
You too.